Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Dalid Amud Beis at the very top. The Seif of our Mishnah tells us that in general it is prohibited to draw forth water using a galgal, a wheel, because a wheel has pails every segment of the wheel, whereby it's very efficient and effective to draw water, and without much tircha, a lot of water can be filled up very easily. So therefore the Chachamim were concerned if a person were able to use a wheel to draw forth water from a bore, he might go ahead and water his gina, his garden, and therefore be over a malacha d'oraisa of zareya on Shabbos. Therefore they prohibited in the Medina to use drawing water with a galgal. But in the Beis HaMikdash, in the bor hagoyle and the bor hagadol, they permitted it because ein shvus b'mikdash. The last case in the Mishnah states even outside of the Beis HaMikdash, there was a certain exception to this rule using a galgal. Says the Mishnah, umi be'er hakar. The be'er hakar was using a galgal, even though it was outside the Beis HaMikdash, but on Yontif, they permitted the usage of this be'er. Ask the Gemara, my be'er hakar? What is this be'er hakar? Omar Shmuel, bor shehikiru aleo dvorim vihitura. It's called be'er hakar because it's a bor that they called many types of arguments and proofs as to why it was necessary to uplift the general takana of using such a galgal. And therefore it was called be'er hakar. They were in a state of dachkus on Yom Tif when they were found by this be'er, encamping by this be'er, and they needed the water desperately, and they explained why it would be mutter over here to use. Meisve asked the Gemara from the following brisa, Loi kol haborois hakorois hitiru elazu bilvad. The brisa states, not all of the borois that are hikirois, they were they matir, except for this one alone. If you're telling me that the whole reason why it's called be'er hakar is because this was different arguments and proofs that were brought, and therefore why would it say in the Brisa there were many types of be'eros like that brought arguments and proofs, and only they were matir this one, maizu bilvad. According to this was something that was unique, that after they came from Bavel, they found themselves encamped on Yantif in front of this be'er, and thereby the way you're explaining it is they made arguments why they should matir the be'er. But the Brisa says there are many ba'aros like that, and only they are matir this one alone. So that cannot be the explanation of what the be'er hakar is. Elo Omar Rav Nachum bar Yitzchok be'er mayim chayim. The reason why it's called be'er hakar is because it's a be'er of fresh spring water. Shnema, it states in a pasuk, Kehokir bayir meimel v'goymer. The Navi says, just like the well springs that causes the waters to flow, so too over here, this be'er hakar has the same name. It's the source of a wellspring. Now the Gemara brings a brisa that we just quoted before, but the continuation of this brisa, the complete brisa, gufa. Loi kol haboros hakarois hetiu elazu bilvad. Not all of the boros that are well springs, that are flowing fresh water, were they matir, except for this one alone. The brisa continues, Ukisha'olu b'nei hagoyla. When the b'nei hagoyla left Bavel, chanu alel, they encamped by this be'er on Yom Tif. Unevim shebeineim hitiru lohen, and the Nevi'im, namely Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi, were matir them to use this be'er. Ad kan the brisa. The Gemara says, V'lo nevim shebeinehem, not just the Nevi'im amongst them that were matir b'shas ma'isa, ela minhag avoisam bidehem, but for future generations also they were matir based on the Nevi'im who were matir earlier. Says the Mishnah, Sheret shenimsa b'mikdosh. If one finds a dead sheretz in the Beis HaMikdash, which it says of the Shmona Shratzim, which is Av Hatuma, and if a person or a beged or kli comes in contact with the sheretz, it becomes a Rishon Letuma. Kohen moitzioi behem yanoi. A kohen should remove it with his avnate. The avnate is the belt, one of the 4 big day kahuna of the kohen hedyot. He should quickly take it off. He should wrap his hand with it and then pick up the sheretz and remove it. Now, this would then prevent his hand from coming in contact with the sheretz, whereby he's not going to become tamei himself. Only the beg will become tamei. Why should he do this? Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika says as not to cause a tumah to remain in the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, it's preferable to go ahead and quickly cause the tumah to be removed, even at the expense of causing one of the big day kahuna to become tamei. Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he says, no, bitzvas shel eitz. He should remove it using wooden tongs that do not have a base kibel, therefore they're not mekabel tuma. And he should go ahead and take one of those wooden tongs, pick up the sheretz and remove it. Shelo l'rabois esatuma, as not to then marbe betuma. In other words, granted, it's going to then cause the sheretz to remain longer in the Beis Hamikdash, but that's preferable than to then find. That's preferable than to go ahead and betame one of the big day kahuna. So we have a machloikis over here, how to remove a sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash, bein bechol, bein b'Shabbos. According to the first opinion, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, he says it's preferable to marbe in tuma, in other words, to cause the avnei to become tamei, so as not to again leave the tuma unnecessarily in the Beis Hamikdash. And Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, no, it's preferable to leave the tuma longer in the Beis Hamikdash than to go ahead and cause one of the big day kahuna, in this case the avnei, to become tamei. The Mishnah goes on to explain that now on Shabbos, where in the Beis Hamikdash is the sheretz found, that it's permissible to go ahead and remove. After all, there's an issue of muktzah, so not every place is it permissible to remove. Depends on where the sheretz is found. Says the Mishnah, Mehechan moitziin oisoi. Where is it found that you can go ahead and remove it on Shabbos? So the first opinion, min ha'heichal, umin ha'ulam, umin ha'uben ha'ulam, l'mizbeach. Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas. Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas says from the mizbeach, meaning from the mizbeach and all the way west until the Kodesh Kadoshim, which would include the area between the mizbeach and the ulam, include the ulam itself, the heichal. That is all. If you find a sheretz there, you can go ahead and remove it on Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva argues and says even a larger area. Kol makom shechayavin al zdoinoi kares v'ashigosoi chatos misham moitzin oisoi. Rabbi Akiva says wherever a person would be chayiv kares if he did it b'mezid with his tuma, or b'shoigeg if he entered, he would be chayiv echatos. From there, that's where if you found the sheretz, you can remove. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva says in all of the Azara, which means from Shar HaNikanor all the way west until the Kodesh Kadoshim, which would include from the Shar Nikanor, including the Ezras Yisrael, the Ezras Kohanim, the area of the Mizbeach, then Bein HaMizbeach to the Ulam, and the Heichal as well. Rabbi Kiva goes on to say, Ushar kol mekomos koifin alav pisach there. But all other places, if you find a dead sheretz, then you should take a copper bowl, copper pot, and put it over the sheretz. Now the last ruling of our Mishnah has nothing to do with our subject. It's talking about where Rabbi Shimon was found to make a kula in regards to Hilchos Shabbos as well as a chumrah. So Rabbi Shimon comes to explain himself. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Makom shehitiu lechachamim mishelcha nasnu lecha. Here Rabbi Shimon is referring to a case where the chachamim, they indeed allowed a person, when they put the simanim, really in a way that shows that the techum of the city, they put it really 15 amos in the inner part. So the true techum is 15 amos later. So therefore, the tchum of this city really is 15 amos later, and indeed a person has 2,000 amos outside the tchum if he's in the city. So Rabbi Shimon says even if a person is traveling before Shabbos and he doesn't make it to the official Techum, as long as he's within 15 amos of the Techum, then he's considered to be in the Techum, whereby he's kind of shvisa like everybody else in the city. He has the whole city, as well as 2,000 amos outside of the city. So that's a kula. However, he also said a chumrah. In the case that we saw more recently, where you have a kinar where the string broke, so one of the Tanoim say you can go ahead and koisher that string. On that, Rabbi Shimon says no, you can only make an aniva, and he explains because there they were not matir ela mishum shvus, and a kshira would be a malacha, and therefore they said it's also. The Gemara will explain these words. Omar Rav Tavi Bar Kisna Omar Shmuel. Shmuel said the following: Hamachnis Tomei Sheretz LaMikdash Chayev. If a person brings a object, a kli that a sheretz was metame, we said again a sheretz is one of the shmona shrotzim that is avatuma, and therefore if a kli comes in contact with it, it makes it a rishon letuma. If a person brings the kli into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of tuma, he's chayev chatos. Sheretz atzma potter, but if it's a sheretz itself, then he'll be potter. So here Shmuel is saying an interesting ruling. On the one hand, if you bring a kli that became tamei from a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash, it's going to cause you to become chayev chatos. Yet the source of the tumah, the sheretz itself, if you were to bring it into the Beis HaMikdash, it would be potter aval aser. My timer therefore asked the Gemara, what's the reason? O Makro, says the Gemara, mizoch v'ad tishalechu. It says in the pasuk, from a man to a woman that are tamei are to be sent out of the machana, sent out of the Beis HaMikdash in their state of tumah. Misha yesh lo tahara b'mikvah, because they have the ability to become tahar in the mikvah, therefore they have the requirement to leave the machane. Yatsa sheretz she'ein lo tahara b'mikvah, to exclude a sheretz that does not have the ability to become tahar in a mikvah. So this lechara would be the reason Shmuel says that there's a distinction between a kli and a sheretz itself. Asks the Gemara, or says the Gemara, le mesayele. The Gemara suggests, let us bring a support from a brisa for Shmuel's ruling. Mizochar an nekev tishalechu. The pasuk we just brought before, from a man to a woman, they should be sent out if they're tamei in the Beis HaMikdash. Prat liklei cheres, div Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says to exclude a earthenware vessel, since a kli cheres is excluded. Therefore, that would be a proof. Why? My taimo, is it not because lab mishum the less late tahar mikvah? A kli cheres is unique. That's not like all other kelim. It doesn't have tahar on the mikvah, and therefore it doesn't have to be sent out of the machaneh. So that would be a proof for Shmuel that kelim who have tahar in the mikvah, those that are tamei have to be removed, but those, the sheretz itself, that not. And therefore you would not be chayev chatas if you bring a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, loi, really you can say, not like Shmuel, that indeed by bringing a sheretz into a Beis HaMikdash, it's chayev chatos. But misha nase avatuma, yatsa klicher she'eno nase avatuma. Those things that can become an avatuma, those things, yes, are to then be removed from Beis HaMikdash. But a klicheres that cannot become avatuma, therefore it's not removed. Says the Gemara, Lema kitanoi. But let us suggest that Shmuel is one of two in a machlokes tanoim. Sheretz shenimsa b'mikdash. If you have a sheretz that's found in the Beis HaMikdash, this is our Mishnah states, Koi moitzio behem yonoi shelo l'shahos es atuma. Di Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika says he should take the avnei, wrap it around his hand, and remove the sheretz, as not to allow the dead sheretz to remain in the state of tuma in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Yehuda oimer b'tzvas shel eitz motzio shelo l'rabois es atuma. That you should go ahead and take wooden tongs and remove it from the premises, as not to leave the tumah in the Beis HaMikdash. My lab b'hokamifli, is it not in the following that they are arguing? The man the omar shalol shahois kisova hamachni sheretz lemikdash chayev. The first opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, holds that the reason why you go ahead and metame the avnate is because you don't want to have the sheretz remain in the Beis Hamikdash, because that will metamed Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, a sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash is chayiv. Whereas the other man, Rabbi Yehuda, he says, as not to marbe tumah in the mikdash, it's because he holds that a person who's machnis a sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash is anyways potter. Says the Gemara, really, you can say that they both hold that a sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash is chayiv. But what's the machlokes over here? Here, the kuliyam chayiv v'hocha behaka mifligi. What's their machlokes? Mar sovar shiui tuma adif. Umar sovar apushe tuma adif. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broiko holds that it's preferable to then allow the tuma to be removed quickly, and therefore he prefers that over the shiui of the tuma. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says it's better to have the tuma remain than to then go ahead and metamis something else. And therefore he goes and says better to then remove it with tongs, which might take a bit longer, because it's worse to then cause another thing, in this case the bidei kahuna, to become tamei. Ella, says the Gemara, kahani tanoi. Rather, you can suggest that Shmuel is one of the following opinions in the next part of our Mishnah. In regards to then, where did you find the sheretz to remove? Desnan, mehechan moitzinoi soy. From where did you find the dead sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash you can remove? Ma'ila b'hoka miflegi. Is it not in the following that they're arguing? The man, the omer me'azara loy. That the one who says from the azara, namely Rabbi Akiva, lo, he says that a dead sheretz cannot be brought in the Beis Hamikdash. It would be chayiv chatos. Kisover machni sheretz l'mikdash. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. The man, the omer me'azara loy. That's the other opinion. That's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas. He says that if you find the dead sheretz in the azara, then that you cannot go ahead and pick up, because he holds kisover hamachni sheretz l'mikdash potter. If you bring a dead sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash, it's potter. Uman da omer mikulo azara kisover chayiv. Whereas Rabbi Akiva, who says you find the dead sheretz anywhere in the azara, then you go ahead and pick it up. He holds because a dead sheretz cannot be brought in the Beis Hamikdash. If you do bring it in, you'll be chayiv chatos. On top of Kuf Hey Amid Aleph, the Gemara says even that you cannot go ahead and prove that Shmuel is like one of the opinions of the Tanoim. Really, you can say everybody in the Tanoim hold that a dead sheretz cannot be brought in the Beis Hamikdash. If he does do so, he'll be chayiv chatos. Because they both, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas, they both explain the same pasuk, and based on their explanation, they learn differently. Vayavo hakoyhanim lepnima, beis Hashem l'taher. The pasuk says that the koyhanim here is talking about removal of tuma from the Beis Hamikdash, and starts with the area of all the tuma that was in the heichal. It says that the kohanim should remove the tuma from the pnima Beis Hashem to metar it. That's talking about the heichal. V'yotziu es kol tuma asher moitzoi meheichal Hashem l'chotzer Beis Hashem, and they should take it out, all of that tuma, and place it in the area that is going to be in the azara. And from there, v'yikablu halavim v'hoitzi l'nacha kidron chutza. The pasuk ends and says, from there the Levim will then take that tumah and bring it to Nachal Kidron. So here the Gemara explains, Mar sover mida'ashtani be'azara b'Levim tumah be'azara leko. The opinion, which is really Rabbi Shimon Nanas, he says that since it changes from the Kohanim to the Levim, it shows therefore that the area of the Azara really doesn't have enough choimer, it's not stringent enough to cause the kohen to become tamei, and therefore it switches from the kohanim who became tamei from the removal of the tuma of the heichal to the levim now in the azara, because the area of the azara is not enough going to be stringent to justify the kohen to become tamei. Whereas Umar Silver an heichan deloy efsher belevim mafki kohanim. Whereas the Rabbi Akiva holds that it's only in the area that is the inner part, namely the heichal, that the Kohanim are removing the Tumah because the Levim don't have the rights to go inside. But now that it's possible for the Levim to use that to enter that area, namely the Azara, therefore they are the ones who are now going to then take out the rest of the Tumah. And that's why it spares the Kohanim from doing so. But not to say that it's not going to be a place that is going to then be significant in being Metameh. It is, and therefore, according to Rabbi Akiva, if a sheretz is found in the entire Azara, wherever that may be, then that justifies one to then pick it up and take it out of the Makom Mikdash of the Azara on Shabbos, despite the fact that it is Muktzah.